Hello everyone, welcome to our Truth Be Told YouTube channel with your hosts Rick Howard and Mike Maney.
Number 17, and my partner in this effort is Mike Maney up there in Missoula, Montana. I am Rick Howard here in Modesto, California. And we've skipped a few weeks, haven't we, Mike?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we have.
We're trying to get back on track, of course.
Yes.
We're going to miss another couple, but we're trying to get in a few sessions before we skip a few more. We do want to thank all of you who have checked out our YouTube page. Mm-hmm. I notice we're up to 21 subscribers. So at what point can we monetize this?
Anytime you're ready, man.
I think we'd have to add a few zeros to the 21 subscribers.
I think we would, yes. Yes.
But we do appreciate all of you who have checked it out, listened to some of the sessions. We hope they've been a blessing to you. We obviously are amateurs at this. And no use hiding the fact that you see all the flaws to these videos.
Yeah. I think that's what makes it so appealing. Is just that we're just
appealing,
being us.
Is that the word? Appealing?
Yeah, we're just us. Yeah,
we're just being ourselves.
Yeah.
Our wives might caution us about being ourselves. But
Right. But here we're free.
Be yourself.
Yeah, here
Be
we're free to do that. Nice.
Be your best self.
Yes.
But we've enjoyed putting these sessions together.
Yeah.
And I have to confess to you, though, Mike, at my age, and I know you're a lot older than I am, but I am really confusing myself because we're using this kind of a rough foundation. The sermon outlines I've been using at Liberty, doing the same thing, Luke 24:27 as a text, and going back, looking for Christ in the Old Testament. But at Liberty, I'm on sermon number 29. I'm in the middle of Exodus.
Okay.
So yesterday I'm preaching all about Mount Sinai and the Ten Commandments and the angel of the Lord following them, the rock that followed them, and how Christ is there everywhere. And it is enjoyable. But, now my mind's on Exodus, and now today we're back in Genesis.
Yes.
Because these sessions are a little ways behind where I am on
Yes. Because you were well into your series before we began this. Yeah.
I was probably 8 or 10 into the series, and then we've skipped a few sessions.
Yeah.
And so I'm probably at least 10 or more ahead of where we are on these. And so I feel like I have a split personality because I can really only juggle one ball at a time.
Yes.
And so
yes.
Here it is, Monday, January the 25th. We're doing this special session since we missed the last couple of weeks. Mm-hmm. So my mind is still going over the points from yesterday's sermon. Mm-hmm. And yet I pull out this outline where I preached what we're going to deal with today, Genesis 20 through 23 or so. And I preached that probably 3 months ago.
Oh, my.
So,
Wow. It keeps it fresh, doesn't it?
So if I start talking about Moses on Sinai, please stop me.
Okay.
It's not Sunday, it's Monday.
All right. Okay. Will do.
But we are grateful for everyone who has sent us notes and emails and gone on and subscribed. And please feel free to recommend it to others. We're at a stage in life where what we believe is not hidden. We're not trying to deceive anyone. This is how we look at the Bible. And if we can say some things that spur sermon or lesson ideas or get you to thinking about parts of the Bible you haven't thought about for a while, that makes us happy. You overlook our flaws and our goofiness and our maybe we overlook some things that you think we should include. Just realize that we have the best of intentions.
Yes, we do. Yes.
So how's the weather up there today in Missoula, Mike? Speaking of
well, it's actually nice. It's been chilly, but it's actually nice. Whenever the sun comes out, we're happy. And we notice the days are getting longer now. So, it's not getting dark as early. So that's a good sign. We're crouching into spring.
Crouching.
Yeah.
Spring being like May or June.
Yeah. April. Yeah.
We've already had we already pushed 70 degrees a few days.
Oh, okay.
My wife thinks it's spring, so we've been out in the backyard doing a lot of garden projects and planting and digging and all sorts of stuff. So if we get some hard freezes, we're going to be in trouble.
We got a hard frost the other night. There was a hard frost on my pickup on the windshield. I just pulled the windshield wipers up off of the, so they don't stick. The rubber will stick to the glass.
No, I don't know that.
Take my word for
it. We think if there's a little bit of frost on our car windows that are parked outside, because it gets down to like 30, Yeah. So I just turn on the windshield wiper and wipers, and it kind of washes it away.
Okay.
We think that's
when you go to hit the windshield washer and it's frozen inside the tubes.
Has it been a wet winter?
No.
Very
little snow.
Because I noticed we've had a very dry winter. We're getting some storms this coming week, but it's really been a dry winter.
Yeah.
And I noticed a lot of the storms are going north of us into Oregon and Washington, into Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of times like that, it drops down to where you are, but it must be still staying north of you into Canada or something, then dropping down in the Great Lakes or something.
Yeah, if it drops down from Canada, that's where we see our temperatures really drop quickly. And we're in for a couple of days of real, frigid cold. But anything coming over from the west, it's not as bad. I think a lot of it gets dumped over there. We're just in this valley, as you know, and we're kind of protected. So
what did you call it one time? The banana belt of Montana?
Yeah, we're Montana's banana belt.
As you're scraping the ice off your windshield.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Back to my frozen banana joke.
Yeah. Nice. Hey, I hope this is kind of off topic, but we're beginning to plan our fellowship meeting in July, and we didn't know if you were looking to take an extra vacation up here, but you're more than welcome to swing by.
Swing by,
yeah.
1,500 miles. Swing by.
Yeah, right. Just come on in.
Well, I was on my way over to.
Yeah, right. I thought I just dropped in.
Stop by for a few days. What month is it this year?
July. We haven't picked the actual date, but it's usually third week or so of July.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're trying to.
I might surprise you, but
yeah.
It's usually about every 5 years or longer that I make it there.
I know.
Only 2 years, so I'm not. Yeah. Probably not, but we'll see.
Yeah. I didn't know if maybe with COVID and California and stuff that maybe people were looking to get out, and just take a little break. And
speaking of COVID, today is January the 25th. We're less than 1 week into a new administration in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Just to put it all in context.
Yeah.
We have a Democratic governor, of course. And it's just the most amazing thing happened this morning. He's lifted the stay-at-home orders and said that a lot of things can be opened back up again. And yet I look at the numbers and people in the hospital, and it still seems to be fairly high. But all the news is good news all of a sudden. Our new president, in less than 1 week, has really made things improve in our state. It's just maybe I should have voted for him. If he's going to improve things that quick.
Well, this way you can enjoy the benefits without blood on your hands. You have to say it. Oh, man.
So this is going to be yet another very interesting year in our country.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're trying to do with these sessions is to keep our minds as much as possible off of politics.
Yeah.
As I've been reminding Liberty more and more, I think we are entering a time where our heavenly citizenship is going to be much more important, but it's also going to be more in conflict than our citizenship of America.
Yeah.
And we're going to return to the time when your allegiance to your country is going to be in conflict to a large degree with your allegiance to the Lord and to your church and to just your life, your religious life.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally, yeah. It is coming, and so we're trying to brace ourselves, for it.
Anyway, we're trying to look for Christ everywhere in the Old Testament. And you know what we've found? We don't have to look very hard.
No, we don't. No.
I mean, when I was looking at a verse yesterday. Where was that? Oh, it was when Philip came to Nathanael in John chapter 1 and said, "We have found him of whom Moses and the prophets spoke about, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Right away, early on, after the baptism by John, Philip was able to say, "We found the one that Moses and the prophets all spoke about."
Yeah.
And yet Jesus had done no miracles, preached no sermons.
No.
He was still in the process of barely the beginning of calling out his disciples and forming his church.
So what evidence?
So for Philip to have that insight.
Yeah.
Well, I would say one thing that caused it was John the Baptist was a pretty good teacher. You know, he taught his own disciples what to look for.
Yeah.
So that when he pointed at a distance and said, "Behold the Lamb of God," they had already been prepared for that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like new information.
Right.
Or it wasn't like a surprise or a shock. Moses. See, there I am already.
Right.
John had done a great job training his newly baptized disciples.
Yeah.
Because his purpose in training them was so that they could transition over to Christ when he came on the scene. So that when Jesus walked along the seashore, called out those fishermen, "Follow me," they had no hesitation. Why? Because John had done a good job.
Yeah.
Now they've been, Jesus had been baptized, and a little bit of time had passed. For all of it to sink in. But I think we underestimate the importance of what John taught them.
Yeah.
I mean, when it says that he came to prepare the way, and he came to prepare a people.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, how did he do that? Not just in the act of baptism, but in the teaching that he provided. Anyway, I'm going off on a rant, but that's kind of an unappreciated, I think, part of John's ministry.
Yeah. And I think much on the same scale as when Peter confessed that you are the Christ, he said, "Well, blessed are you. This has been revealed to you from my Father." So you have to open up your heart and mind for that to happen. You can't be biased like the Pharisees. You have to really be neutral, as it were, and receive, observe with your eyes. And so there must have been something about Jesus that Philip saw, recognized. Of course, his mentor, his teacher, pointed him out. Okay, so you zeroed it in on one person. Okay, and then who was it that said, "You were the Christ"? It was the same story, wasn't it? Same incident. I saw you under the tree.
Oh yeah, Nathanael saw you under the fig tree.
Yeah. So he's just kind of leaking out a little bit of power there. That he was different.
Yeah.
So
you are the King of Israel. You are the Son of God.
Yeah.
I mean, so Nathanael, even though he kind of argued with Philip a little bit at first, Nathanael right away grabbed hold of it.
Yeah.
So early on, those disciples that John had well prepared, So they didn't need a whole lot of prompting.
Yeah.
When Jesus came on the scene.
Yeah.
There were others, that tried to stay with John, and later he had to send messengers. Are you the Christ or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
That kind of thing. But
and
even Jesus' disciples, kind of looked at John's disciples with suspicion. Why are they over here casting out demons and doing good works?
Yeah.
And they're not with us.
Yeah.
And that's misunderstood too. Jesus said, they that are not with us, against us are for us.
Yeah.
But there was only two groups of lawful people, weren't there?
Right. Yeah.
The disciples with Christ and the disciples of John.
Yes. Yeah.
So it wasn't like there's these Lone Rangers out here, this group unconnected to anyone.
Right.
That they were talking about casting out demons, doing miracles.
Nice.
So,
and everyone receives the truth, from a different perspective, different level. What does it take to convince? Some very little, and some more.
And I suppose if you're hanging around John and he's teaching you about the Messiah's getting ready to come on the scene any moment, because he knew it would be any moment.
Yeah.
And Jesus comes and John baptized him, and they hear that interchange between John and Jesus, and then they see the Holy Spirit descending like a dove, lighting on him, and the voice from heaven saying, "This is my beloved Son."
Yeah.
You might well please. Well, I would think that would be kind of enough.
Yeah. I would think. Yeah. But then at another time, the voice came, and some people thought it thundered. So, you know what I'm saying? So some are just hard-hearted. They're just not looking for it, and but thankfully he had those tender hearts who were in ready position to receive it immediately, so he could get underway with that ministry and not have to wait into it a year or two or whatever. So. But
anyway, I don't know if I think in our second or third session or something, we went through a bunch of New Testament verses that talked about the revelation of Christ was in Moses and the prophets and the Psalms.
Yeah.
And it was everywhere. But I don't know if we included this one. Maybe we did. But it just struck me yesterday when I used it in a sermon that Philip so early said, "We have found him of whom Moses and the prophets spoke about."
Yeah.
That's a pretty big revelation.
That is big.
So early, isn't it?
Yeah. And he had his moment there, much to Jesus' surprise. Show us the Father.
Oh yeah, show us the Father.
Yeah. So again, things that the devil's always pounding away to create a doubt.
Oh yeah.
Get a foot in the door, as it were.
But the Lord even had tried to test his faith and make it grow.
Yeah.
In the feeding.
Yeah.
When he tested Philip.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he connected some dots. He says, "Have I been with you all this time?"
Yeah.
In other words, our history. Are you throwing out our history because now you have a question? There's some point in which we have to nail some things down along the way.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Philip kind of failed that test, didn't he?
Yeah.
Well, where can we buy and provide so much food in the wilderness?
Yeah.
Oh, how about for 40 years I did it? No problem.
Yeah. I'm no stranger.
Don't you know your Bible? Don't you know the history of your own people?
Yes.
And so we kind of put him down for things like that. Human doubting Thomas and Peter. I mean, they all had their moments.
They all did. Yeah.
But it was to Philip in John, where is it? 12. Yeah, just before the upper room experience. It was Philip that those Greeks, those Grecians, who had come for Passover, they came to Philip, didn't they? It's interesting. They came to Philip and said, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus."
Yeah, yeah.
Why did they approach Philip?
Yeah.
There was something about Philip, I think, that was curious and was growing and was improving.
Yeah.
And so Philip went and grabbed Andrew, and then they went and told Jesus. But this is kind of interesting to me. Why did they approach Philip? You say, well, it's just by coincidence, or he was the one closest or something.
Yeah, You might have thought, Peter.
If you're those Greeks observing the group, you would see that Peter's the natural leader.
Yeah.
You see that John is maybe the closest one to Christ.
Yeah.
And so you think you'd approach those two.
Yeah.
They approached Philip.
Yeah.
So I like to think there was something about Philip that drew them.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that he was the first one with such a good insight there in John chapter 1.
Yeah. It's amazing, and it shows their humanity as well.
Yeah, but it's so fun as a preacher to put them down like that.
Yeah.
And not, as we say, not point the finger at ourselves.
Yeah.
How often we fail the test every day.
Yeah. And that's the truthfulness of the scriptures. They're not trying to gloss anything over. These are real people just like us, who had real challenges, moments of doubt, discouragements, all of that. And it's all right there in black and white, recorded, as much as was needed to be recorded, enough to show us, hey, these are real people,
Yes.
And then at every turn, Jesus handled this situation very tactfully, very gracefully, giving us preachers material.
Yeah.
And how to, which we don't always do, by the
way. Well, last session, number 16, we got up through the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot escaping by the skin of his teeth.
Yeah.
And his wife turning into a pillar of salt.
Yeah.
And the aftermath of that with his daughters. But we get back to Abraham now in chapter 20 of Genesis. And we don't really need to spend much time in chapter 20 because we're really looking for references or types and shadows or instances of a connection to Christ. But I do find it interesting that Abraham journeyed from there to the south, to the Negev desert, dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and sojourned in Gerar. So you read a verse like that, you think, okay, big deal, I'm going to move on, there's nothing there. But I got to thinking about why you look at these maps where Abraham traveled and where he settled and where he built altars and everything. Why did he go there? Why didn't he stay in Hebron? Why didn't he stay in Bethel or some other place? He goes over to the land of the Philistines later, over there toward the coast, over there toward the Gaza Strip. Why go there? It's west of Beersheba. It's the southwest part of Israel. But I wondered if part of this might be prompting by the Lord. Remember back in chapter 13 when God renewed the covenant with him, gave him the boundaries of the land, and said, Abraham, I want you to walk all over the area of land I'm giving you. I mean, we think of Israel as a small piece of land, but if you look at the boundaries that God gave him there, and you think about traveling with your family in tents and animals and things, and you're going from the north to the south to the east, the west, and all over, God told him to. Maybe this is part of him fulfilling that. Well, I haven't been over there yet. This is part of the inheritance. Maybe I should go check it out. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of maybe why Abraham would be prompted to go there. And part of it is because God wanted him, and then later Isaac and Jacob, to have a relationship with this Abimelech figure. And Abimelech may be a title that has the idea of a ruler, so it may not be actually a personal name as much as it is a title. But it opens up this idea that first came about in chapter 12 when they went down to Egypt and Pharaoh tried to take Sarah. Now Abimelech does. And why is this even in here for? It just seems like a kind of an odd thing to insert here. But the promise of the birth of Isaac is getting ready to be fulfilled in chapter 21. Mm-hmm. They had already been given the promise back in chapter 19. And so she is in the process of becoming young and beautiful again. Mm-hmm. And she was beautiful. Abimelech saw something in her that was beautiful. Down in verse 11, Abraham said, because I thought surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will kill me on account of my wife. Mm-hmm. But you have to kind of read a little bit between the lines. This lifelong agreement that Abraham had with Sarah back in verse 2, that she is my sister. That's one of those little white lies that we use a lot. Huh? Mm-hmm. Well, it's partly true.
Yeah.
It's kind of true.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not exactly lying. I'm just kind of stretching the truth a little bit.
Well, this falls in line with what we were talking about with the apostles. He had a little lapse in confidence to the promise. He looked around at the water and saw the waters were around his feet and began to sink. Yes. So this is a moment. And unfortunately, he got called out on it, and it's embarrassing, that he wasn't trusting his God.
Yes.
So he kind of caught him in this situation.
But God had already appeared to them back in chapter 18, and he said something real interesting in verse 10 of chapter 18. He said, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life. You read verses like that, and it appears that it was not just a miraculous birth to an old woman who looked old. Mm-hmm. He was restoring her youth. He was restoring life to her body. And she was beautiful as a young woman, mm-hmm. and now he's making her beautiful again, and here she is 89 years old. I don't think she looked 89 years old.
Yeah.
Abimelech normally would not be attracted to an 89-year-old lady.
Yeah, you wouldn't think.
But God was restoring her body.
Yeah.
And restoring Abraham's body. Their body's as good as dead. Mm-hmm. Romans 4 and Hebrews 11 talks about. So this, I don't know how far to take this, but the idea of her body becoming young again before she had Isaac, what a blessing that was. Mm-hmm. I mean, what a blessing when you're 89 and he was 99.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you wake up one day, I don't know how sudden it was, mm-hmm. and you feel young and strong and energetic. And you look in whatever mirrors they had at that time, and the wrinkles are gone. And
Yeah. It's almost like he was preparing her to take on motherhood.
I think that's it.
And the rigors and the, all that goes along with it,
And so Abimelech saw all of this, and he desired her, and mm-hmm. This conflict arose. And so God had to speak to Abimelech and said in verse 6 in a dream, I know you did this in the integrity of your heart. So mm-hmm. It was just kind of a normal thing, and he didn't feel like he was violating anything. And then verse 7's interesting. Now, therefore, restore the man's wife, for he is a prophet. Had you ever seen before God called Abraham a prophet? Mm-hmm. And if I'm correct, this is the first use of the word prophet in the Bible, and it's used by God of Abraham. They're just those little nuggets. You go back through these familiar stories and read this, and preached this, and taught this, but I don't know if I had ever really focused on God introducing the idea of the word prophet and applying it to Abraham.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, interesting.
So then you think, in what ways was he a prophet?
Mm-hmm. He didn't seem to be doing a lot of preaching down there.
No.
It's kind of like Gideon hiding behind haystacks. He's a little fearful of his life there.
And we say it was a lifelong agreement from verse 13. came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, this is your kindness that you should do for me. In every place, wherever we go, say of me, he is my brother.
Mm-hmm.
So Abraham doesn't look too good in all of this, but they are strangers in a strange land. Abimelech was a king of a group of people.
Yeah.
It was nothing to kill somebody if you wanted their wife. And so
I think we look at the culture. You're right. People had no qualms about killing. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't murder to them. It was just defending your territory. That's just how they view life completely different over there in the Middle East, even today. Yes. And we even see David relapsing a little bit with, which king was it? The Philistine king, when he pretended to be crazy.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So he feared his life as well. And so, in the moment, this fear just kind of overwhelms you, and you think outside of what you maybe would normally. And here's David, killing 10,000 people, tens of thousands of people, himself reverted to this helpless, foot soldier, as it were.
Before we look into the actual birth of Isaac, to continue the story of Abimelech, we see down in verse 22 of chapter 21, through the remainder of the chapter, a quarrel developed over a well. And this is really good stuff, too.
Yeah.
They entered into a covenant. They named the place of it Beersheba, which means the well of the oath, or the well of the seven. There were 7 lambs of sacrifice that they offered there. And you think, well, what's this got to do with Christ? What's this got to do with serving the Lord or being a Christian or anything like that? But it does give us insight to how the godly seed is to deal with the pagans around them, is to be a witness. Abraham figured out a way. Okay, God almost killed him before because we'd entered into a lie about Sarah. Now we have this quarrel over this well. So Abraham's always thinking, okay, how can I maybe display something about the true God and the promises he has given me? And so he figured out a way to offer sacrifices, to acknowledge a certain amount of trust and friendship with Abimelech, to try to work with him. Because Abraham knew it was all going to be his one day.
Yeah.
And so he was working in the moment to try to bring about a certain amount of peace. And it showed some wisdom and showed some godly desire to not just let the conflict develop into a hatred, into a war or something. Maybe turn it around for good.
Yeah.
Interesting story. And the reason this fits in so well is this, later with Isaac and Jacob digging again the wells, and the same idea of these wells come into play. And the importance of wells in the Bible, a picture of Christ as the water of life. And
in fact, you had was it a series of sermons, or was it just one sermon on the wells of salvation? Was that one?
Yeah, that's from Isaiah chapter 12, verse 3. The wells of salvation. And because they named their wells, Abraham did, and then Isaac restored them and named them with the same name that Isaac had named them. So it really develops into a really good thought of we don't have to come up with new names for our doctrines or anything. Just
right.
Name them the same,
Yeah.
And restore the wells and let them bring forth what they brought forth before. But the idea here of working with the pagans regarding these wells to testify of the true God is, I don't know, there's more here than what meets the eye at first.
Well, I guess in our situation, as Abraham, the bride is going to inherit the earth. To rule the earth. Okay. Well, in the meanwhile, we pay the light bill, We pay the mortgage. We work with the pagans, knowing one day that the land is not going to be theirs. You know, we're going to receive it as an inheritance. But in the meanwhile, you roll along with what's the order of the day until Jesus comes back and distributes.
Well, I mean, we're taught in the New Testament and that we are to deal with those of this world in such a way that it does not harm the testimony we have, that it can enhance it in some way. And in this case, after they entered into this oath and offered the lambs as a sacrifice, verse 33, Abraham planted a tree in Beersheba, and there called on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And the people around there knew it. So he was declaring himself openly a follower of the God who called him out of Ur, true God. And it says Abraham sojourned in the land of the Philistines many days. So he's traversing the land where pagans had lived for many years and were entrenched. And he was figuring out a way to not make enemies of them and be a witness to them. Because he knew that he was the one who had the promise, not them. Just interesting, this interaction between him and Abimelech. And
so he literally was planting the name of God in that area.
Yes, he was.
You know, you're putting on your stake, you're planting, you're seeding that land with that name associated with that tree. I wonder if that would be a witness against them. You know, who is this God? You know, because they had all their gods, right?
Yes.
And so.
Yeah, it's interesting. So he built altars in other places, but here's a well. So what do you do by where there's water? You plant a tree. Instead of building an altar, even though he in some form did when he offered those animals. But this idea of a tree by a well is just, it's very symbolic, isn't it? It's almost like Revelation 21 and 22 language, trees by a well. The water flowing from the throne and the tree of life and all that is, I don't know, there's some, it's like a foundation or a little start here of that idea. Developed through the Bible, the tree by the well.
And I think an altar might have been too much of an affront to those people. You know what I'm saying? So here is something, a tree is a little more neutral or innocent, even though he attached God's name to it. The everlasting God, the one and true God is what he's alluding to.
Now, what does it say in the regular King James says in verse 33, planted a grove.
A grove,
Grove. The New King James says a tamarisk tree. I probably should have done some research.
Tamarisk.
Tamarisk tree. I don't know enough about tamarisk trees, and maybe one of our listeners will be watching this and say, well, you should have just got out your Bible dictionary and looked it up before we started the session.
Well, that's why we have listeners, so they can do that.
And someone may have already taught a lesson or preached a sermon and figured it all out and made some spiritual application. You know.
Please send it to us. There may be something to that.
So we come back to the start of chapter 21. This is where the story of the birth of Isaac. And I like how it starts out. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said. The Bible just reaffirms over and over again the faithfulness of God. When I say something,
absolutely,
to do it. And the idea of a set time in verse 2. So the appointed time. He had said he was going to visit her the next year. Any minute. So God's faithfulness. And God's faithfulness, as we grow older, we understand this better. That really is like the most important thing, is to understand that God is faithful.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, Brother Cardona is focusing on the whole idea that in our Christian walk, we need to learn to sit the sitting position is a relaxed position. And he said, you need to learn to sit before you learn to stand and before you learn to walk. And so he's moving toward the ultimate, where we sit, we walk, we stand. He says, but then the ultimate is to withstand. And so this is where he's going with this. Okay, he's laid it all in kind of a, an outline form to begin with.
Progression.
Yes, and now he's going into the meat of it. And so, because we have people who struggle, with anxiety and just job pressures and things like this, just everyday stuff. And so he's trying to get them to see the need to sit, to be calm, to be quiet, to let the Lord permeate you. It goes beyond just having your head full of knowledge. Okay, it has to permeate your senses, your emotions, and everything about you to get you into this relaxed mode. Okay, to trust God. And so I'm really enjoying it. But that's what Abraham and Sarah needed to do too. They needed to really trust. And these moments of anxiety were moments where he wasn't sitting, as it were. He was anxious over the moment. And God's teaching him. And like you said, he's keeping his promises. So he's keeping his end of the bargain while trying to teach them in the moment, just to keep walking, keep trusting.
So he visits Sarah. She conceives. And she bore Abraham a son in his old age at the set time. So we've talked about that before, this idea of a set time. The first seed of Abraham, Isaac, was born by miracle at a set time. The great seed of Abraham, Christ, was born by miracle at a set time. And in due time, Christ was born of a woman under the law. And so it holds true. And Abraham called the name of his son who bore to him who Sarah bore to him Isaac, which means laughter. He circumcised him the 8th day, of course. Christ was circumcised the 8th day. Both ends of the seed spectrum, from Isaac to Christ.
I have a note.
Go ahead.
I have a penciled in note at verse 3, and I don't know if I got it from you.
Well, it's in pencil, so you probably got it from me because you knew you might need to change it in the future.
Well, it says, put my magnifying glass.
Giving yourself away.
Yeah, usually I write who spoke the note. So when I write it down, I put the date there and who it was, but there's none of that. So maybe it was one of my random thoughts. But it says, no doubt she was laughing as she held Isaac.
So her laughter we asked before when she originally laughed in the tent, was it, I think you said, let me see, we asked the question, was it a laughter of doubt? Was it laughter of joy?
Yeah.
And I think what word did you use?
You're asking me to remember that?
It combined both of those ideas.
Okay.
Excitement. I forget the word you used.
Yeah.
But I agreed with you.
Yeah. I don't remember what I said, and you don't remember what you agreed to. Where does that put us?
Our advertisers are going to withdraw their advertising. We can't get our story straight. I think now it is strictly a laughter of joy and excitement.
Absolutely. Motherhood,
I mean, her body was made younger again. You keep saying that. How do we know that? Well, verse 7.
Yeah.
She also said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Her body was made younger.
Yeah.
But in her mind, she knows that she's 90.
Yeah.
But she looks at her body and she's a young woman again.
Yeah.
And you're holding a little baby and you're nursing that baby.
Yeah.
Now talk about laughing for joy.
Yeah, you couldn't help but laugh. It just be in a giggle mode, But I mean, in the wilderness, their shoes didn't wear
Abraham
out.
And Sarah both, the tears running down their face,
the
laughter, the joy, celebration.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of, you said her body is younger again. I'm thinking of the sandals that didn't wear out in the wilderness. And, God can do this, for his covenant people. He can take care of us so well.
But then we come to the sad part of this story that Isaac grew and was weaned. Abraham made a great feast on the day Isaac was weaned. Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, scoffing. And we'd already seen this in Hagar when she was going to have Ishmael, and Sarah became despised in her eyes, and that's the first time Sarah sent her away. But God sent Hagar back. As long as she was willing to accept God's election of Isaac as the promised son, things would be better for Hagar and Ishmael than if they had stayed out there in the wilderness. It was God who sent them back. But now the cycle is complete. Not only did Hagar mock or look despised towards Sarah, now Ishmael himself is scoffing or mocking. Paul uses the word in Galatians 4:29, persecuted. So it was pretty strong what was going on here. It wasn't just like a little laugh and a little bit of mockery. It was pretty deep. It was Ishmael at 13 years old, already developing into a young man. His voice was changing. He was strong. He'd probably well versed at going out and hunting wild animals, supplying food for the family, doing lots of hard chores. And here's this little runt of a baby half brother, and he's going to be the one. How dare him to think that he should be the one when I'm the one that's big and strong and old and I can do things. And so, but it wasn't really against Isaac. It was against God's choice of Isaac. That was the mockery. That's when God stepped in. So he wasn't cast out until he mocked God's choice.
And I think we talked about this
in about election quite a bit.
We did. We talked about this, and we talked about the need for God to really begin in the separating process. He knew where he was going to go with this toward the end times. So this mockery, persecution, animosity, jealousy had to continue to exist down through the centuries, because this is what helped, train Israel, her enemies, God using her enemies. And of course, we see this Revelation 12, this same enemy, as it were, is still going to mock and persecute and go after the covenant people. And there's still jealousy. But isn't it interesting to see, back on politics a little bit, isn't it interesting to see that what Trump got started is continuing to evolve? Saudi Arabia allowed Israel, some of their contestants, I guess, to be in a race. I think it was a race of some kind, to compete in a race. And so these enemies of Israel are beginning now to soften their position with Israel. And this thing is going to continue to snowball, ushering in what I understand as the mock peace. It has to begin somewhere, and I believe we're seeing it actually begin to take shape.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
So the enemies of our day, well, of our entire life, we've known them as enemies, had to begin at some point. Ishmael is the beginning of that seed line.
Yeah, the descendants of Ishmael and Esau, because Esau married a daughter of Ishmael.
Yes.
And then the sons of
Keturah. Yeah.
They're all still mocking Isaac and Jacob.
Yeah.
But Isaac and Jacob are proving that they have some things of value
that
the other brothers admire and want.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Isn't it funny? It's being played out 4,000 years later.
Yes. Yeah.
And so those who see that value in Isaac and Jacob are entering into these treaties. Mm-hmm. Those who only want to continue mocking are the ones that will be on the outside, and probably will be the ones maybe uniting with Antichrist. Mm-hmm. It's hard to know how all that's going to work. Maybe a mix of both groups, but it is from the descendants of all those sons that Antichrist will form that confederation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Even Lot's daughters, the Moabites and the Ammonites, so even they became enemies.
Yeah, exactly. And we've talked some about this odd mix in the Bible, like in Isaiah, other places, of God's anger and judgment against Egypt, and yet God's favor toward Egypt at different times.
I know, yeah.
It's an interesting mix, and we've talked about some of the reason for the favor is that Egypt protected God's people. Mm-hmm. Just like during the tribulation, God's going to provide a place in the wilderness for her to run to for safety. Egypt was that place for Abraham and then for the whole family, for Joseph and Jacob. Yeah. And then for baby Jesus. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then in this case, even though Hagar and Ishmael are not the chosen ones, they still are of Abraham. So they're sent away, and she's called the Egyptian in verse 9. And then in verse 21, because of that, she took a wife for Ishmael from the land of Egypt. So there's that Egypt connection coming into the bloodline of Abraham. Mm-hmm. And then later, Joseph is given an Egyptian wife, the daughter of a priest. And Joseph, through Ephraim, is given much of the birthright blessing. And so Manasseh and Ephraim especially are mixed blood, Jewish Egyptian. Mm-hmm. They received the bulk of the birthright blessing. Mm-hmm. Judah, of course, received the rulership. But this idea of God's purpose with Egypt, and especially as we get into Joseph having an Egyptian wife and bringing forth the son that would be favored, ties into all of this somehow, of God's eventual mercy on Egypt, even though she may not deserve it, but because of some of these things. Mercy comes out.
And I think we noted that somewhere it says that there's a highway that will traverse from, it was Assyria down through the Holy Land, down into Egypt. And so, and men will walk on that road. And so for some reason, he's keeping that, that whole area from top to bottom.
They're in Isaiah 19. It deals with all that, especially the verse 18 through 25. It deals with all that, and that highway and God's favor on all of them. And
it's a mystery right now to me.
God's going to bring what develops during the tribulation, what is called the king of the north and king of the south, is represented by Assyria and Egypt.
Yes.
And somehow God's going to bring all of that animosity into a blessing in the kingdom age. So maybe in some way those mocking sons of Abraham are going to find peace with their brother Isaac and Jacob to some degree.
That's interesting.
So the false peace, the Antichrist, is going to be true peace.
Yeah. Well, amen.
What else? Chapter 22 is too much, isn't it? That's when Abraham offers Isaac, so we can't really jump into that here. It'll be for another session. But what else do you want to bring out in these as we see their application to Christ? The seed of Abraham is now being literally developed in the person of Isaac, culminate in the person of Christ. Mm-hmm. And everything in between is the rest of the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about why did Abraham go into territory of the Philistines, and then why down south to Egypt? It's almost like these are touch points. All the land is going to be given, but it's like God is planting His covenant person in these areas, so He touched the land physically, because He really does represent Yahweh. Okay, He's the prophet of God, and so it's like as if God Himself is touching these areas, planting these flagpoles and influence on these societies. Kind of like Nineveh when He sent Jonah. God will send a representative, and Abraham.
Well, God told him back there in chapter 13, lift up your eyes northward, southward, eastward, and westward. That's 13:14. For all the land which you see, I give to you and your descendants forever. But not just look, he says in verse 17, arise, walk in the land through its length and its width. He's basically telling Abraham, I want you to walk every inch of this land. Mm-hmm. I want your feet, even though you're not going to inherit it in your lifetime, I want your feet to touch it. Mm-hmm. So it becomes more real to you, so that the promise of the resurrection and your future inheritance is in your thoughts every step you take.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful.
Yeah. It's almost like surveying the land. We have your instruments out there and you're surveying
the land. I like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's these landmarks and these posts, from there to there. It's like Abraham is going around the circumference.
We see this tree down in the southwest part, these altars. Mm-hmm. It is almost like he's putting down markers all through the land, huh?
Yeah.
Surveying it and then marking it.
With God's name on every one of them.
Yeah, with God's name.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. Amen. Well, have we extracted...
I'm sure we've overlooked some things.
I'm sure we have.
But I'm sure we have. As we often say, this is not highly organized. Some of it were, because I'm trying not to just go through my sermon outlines.
Yeah.
Because you preach these kind of things differently than what you do in these kind of sessions.
Yeah, yeah.
And so a lot of this we're just trying to look at with fresh eyes and bring out what we see. And some of it's kind of just bouncing off each other. And
just off the cuff, just unrehearsed. Just as raw as it gets.
But it's not completely with no thought. We have studied these things a few times.
Yes, we have,
And I have recently preached on them and brought out some of these things. So we're not completely winging it, but we do want it to be somewhat fresh. Hey, I wanted to, maybe I should have done this at the beginning, since maybe our listeners by now are falling asleep and not paying attention. But we've never really given out our email address. I know most people that watch these have it. Mm-hmm. But if anyone wants to contact us by personal email, it might be good to give it out. So yours is Mike A. Maney, M-A-N-E-Y, all one word, at gmail.com. Mm-hmm. And mine is Howard Brick 05, all together, no caps, at gmail.com. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching this and you really don't know us and you just kind of stumbled across it, or someone referred you to this, and you'd like to send us a note of some type, that's our email address to contact us.
Yeah, good point.
Maybe we'll do a better job on our YouTube page of putting some more contact information or ability to respond or things like that. But we're just happy right now to go through these and get them recorded and get them up there. And we'll try to improve things as we go along.
Yeah. And just in reference to some of our early earlier sessions as to where our application would be going and how we're tying in the scriptures, how we look at the scriptures, that everywhere we go, we're seeing the overview, the hand of God in working out a covenant. And so this just haphazard, just random stories or just random people that they're all tying into this Abrahamic covenant. And so I hope that we're not straying too far from our listeners from that point. And so we do see God's hand as he causes Abraham to travel throughout this land that he's promised, that he's really representing God everywhere he goes. And God is laying down his claim, his stake, as it were, in every parts of this land.
So like he really took it to heart what God said. I want you to walk all through north, south, east, and west.
Yeah.
So it's part of the purpose. We see these little side travels. I think, wow, maybe I was just saying I need to. I've not been to that part yet, so I need to get over there.
Yeah, get over there. Yeah.
See what I'm going to inherit in the resurrection.
Yeah.
It's like the Garden of Eden again.
Just shake hands with the neighbors and tell them that you're going to own their house one day. Or something like that.
You may have said a variation of that.
Yes.
Well, as always, Mike, thank you for your contributions and for hosting this and allowing me to come on. And
well, I love it, brother. Love it.
Yeah, we're just two good friends talking about the Bible.
That's yeah. What more can you ask? All right. So you want to do another session tomorrow, or you want to next week, or what?
I'll talk to you offline about that.
Okay.
Have to think about that more.
Okay.
But I'd like to get another session or two in before I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Let's do it. Yeah. Great. Okay, we're never going to catch up to your sermon outlines. We're so far behind on those.
Well, I hope I don't get behind, because then that would really seem backwards if the session went ahead of the sermons.
I know.
I do a lot of my research and everything for the sermon, so that when we do these sessions, it's halfway fresh.
It's halfway fresh. Yeah.
I can recall things.
All right, my friend.
Are you going to be able to stay on this time, or am I going to lose you?
I'm going to hit end and see what happens here.
Okay.
All right.
See you next time, Mike.
Okay.